Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going on a journey. It's one of history's most dramatic transformations, the conversion of Saul. You might know him better as Paul. He's the apostle who was so important, He helped spread Christianity. But before he changed his name, and before the preaching and all that, he was actually someone who went after Christians. He persecuted them. So we're going to be looking at excerpts from the book of Acts, chapter 9, in the New King James Version, to try and understand how this incredible shift happened.
It's a story that really speaks to the power of change and the unexpected ways that faith can emerge, even in the hearts of people who seem totally resistant.
Okay, so let's set the stage. We first meet Saul when he's on his way to Damascus. But it's not exactly on a sightseeing trip, is he?
Not quite. He's on a mission to stamp out the early Christian movement. You see, Saul was a Pharisee. That was a group known for sticking to Jewish law. Think of them like the legal scholars at the time.
Yeah.
Very influential and committed to their tradition.
And Saul wasn't just watching from the sidelines, was he? He was actively going after these early Christians.
Absolutely. He thought they were a threat to everything he believed in, and he was determined to stop them. In fact, he was traveling with official letters.
Yeah.
That gave him the authority to arrest Christians in Damascus. That shows how much he was invested in this.
So he's going to Damascus with a plan, completely convinced that he's doing the right thing, and then, well, things take a pretty dramatic turn.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. As he's getting close to Damascus, this blinding light flashes from the sky.
Wow, can you imagine what that would have been like? You're on this important mission, and all of a sudden, bam, there's this crazy light show from who knows where. It would be pretty jarring.
Yeah, it was a moment of divine intervention. It totally disrupted his plans. He falls to the ground, overwhelmed by what's happening. And then he hears a voice.
A voice calling to him.
Yes. And not just any voice. It calls his name twice. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Just think about how unsettling that would be. You're going about your day. Sure, you're doing the right thing. And then a voice from heaven calls you out by name. I'd be questioning everything.
It's like the whole universe is stopping you. Like it's saying, hold on a minute, we need to talk.
Exactly. And Saul, understandably, he's confused. He responds with the most natural question. Who are you, Lord?
And that's the moment that changes everything, right?
Absolutely. The voice answers, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. This is what completely changes Saul's world. The person he's been fighting, the one he thinks is a threat, is revealed as the Lord. It's a radical change in how he sees everything.
Talk about an identity crisis. He's been so sure of himself, thinking he was on the right side. Now everything he thought he knew is in question. What must have been going through his head at that moment?
It must have been incredibly disorienting, overwhelming. We can only imagine how he must have felt, trying to figure out his past in this new revelation.
So he's had this encounter with the light. He's heard the voice of Jesus. And now he's actually blind.
Yes, the light left him temporarily blind. He's led into Damascus, helpless and confused. He spends 3 days in darkness, fasting and praying, trying to understand what just happened.
It's like the universe is saying, okay, now you've got the message. Now take some time to think about what it means.
Exactly. It's a turning point in his journey.
Yeah.
But God doesn't leave him alone to figure it out.
There's more.
Oh yeah. This is just the beginning of Saul's transformation.
So Saul is in Damascus. He's blind. And trying to understand this crazy experience, what happens next?
Well, this is where another important character comes in, Ananias. He was a disciple living in Damascus, and God spoke to him directly, telling him to find Saul.
Wait a minute. God wants Ananias to go find the guy who's been arresting Christians. That's a pretty bold move.
It is. And you can imagine Ananias was hesitant. He knew all about Saul's reputation, the persecution, the arrests. He even questioned God. He said, Lord, I have heard from many about this man, how much harm he has done to your saints in Jerusalem.
Yeah, I don't blame him. It would be like welcoming your worst enemy. That's a tough ask.
It shows the fear and distrust that Saul had created within the early Christian community. But God reassures Ananias. He tells him his plan for Saul. He says that Saul is a chosen vessel to carry his name before Gentiles, kings, and the children of Israel.
So God is choosing this former persecutor to become one of his main messengers. That's a powerful statement about forgiveness and second chances.
It is. It makes us think about who we see as worthy. It suggests that God can work through anyone, even people who were completely against his message. This idea of choosing Saul, a man who is trying to destroy the Christian movement, really shows the radical nature of God's grace.
It's like saying your past doesn't have to define your future.
Exactly. And it shows the power of a true encounter with God.
So what did Ananias do? Did he trust God and go find Saul?
He did. He overcame his fear, he found Saul, and laid his hands on him, restoring his sight.
That's incredible.
It is, and it was a big moment for Saul, not just because he could see again, but it's like his spiritual awakening. He's seeing the world differently now.
So what happened after Saul got his sight back? Did he just start preaching right away?
He did. Almost immediately he's baptized and begins proclaiming that Jesus is the Son of God. Can you imagine how shocked those who knew him were?
It would blow my mind. The guy who was arresting them is now standing with them preaching the same message?
It shows how much he changed. This wasn't just a change of mind, it was a complete change of heart. And it shows the power of what happened on the road to Damascus.
But I bet not everyone was happy about this new Saul. I'm sure some people didn't trust him.
Oh, absolutely. Some were amazed by his conversion, but others were skeptical. They remembered what he had done. It's understandable that they needed time.
It reminds us that even when you forgive someone, it doesn't erase the pain of what happened.
Right. And Saul's past actions still had consequences. His preaching in Damascus caused a lot of anger among some in the Jewish community. They couldn't believe this former Pharisee, this defender of the law, was now preaching about Jesus.
It must have felt like a betrayal.
It was a huge shift in loyalty, and it caused a lot of anger and opposition. It got so bad that they planned to kill Saul.
Wow. So now he's in danger, not just from those he used to persecute, but from his own community.
It shows how risky it is to challenge what people believe,
Yeah.
and the backlash you can face when you change your thinking.
So what did Saul do? Did he give up?
Not at all. He kept preaching, but his followers knew he was in danger, so they helped him escape Damascus in a pretty dramatic way.
Okay, I want to hear this. How did he escape?
They lowered him down the city wall in a basket.
Sounds like an action movie. Escaping in the night. What do you think was going through his head during that? Fear? Determination? Excitement?
It must have been a crazy experience, running for his life because of his new faith. But it also shows how strong his belief was and the commitment of those who believed in him. They were willing to risk their own lives to protect him.
So he gets out of Damascus. Where does he go next?
He goes to Jerusalem, hoping to meet the apostles, the leaders of the early Christian movement. But when he gets there, he's met with suspicion and distrust. The disciples remember him as the one who persecuted them. They're hesitant to accept him.
It shows that forgiveness doesn't always mean forgetting the pain.
Exactly. It shows how complicated reconciliation is and how hard it is to rebuild trust.
So how does Saul finally get accepted by the Christians in Jerusalem?
This is where another important person comes in, Barnabas. He's a disciple who believes in Saul's change and speaks up for him to the apostles.
It's interesting how Barnabas is like a bridge between them.
He is. Barnabas becomes a crucial advocate for Saul, helping him join the community. Without Barnabas, Saul might have stayed an outsider.
It's a powerful example of second chances and the impact of someone believing in you, even when other people doubt you.
It also shows the importance of mentorship and guidance in helping someone grow and find their place.
So with Barnabas' help,
Yeah,
Saul is accepted by the disciples in Jerusalem. Sounds like his transformation is well underway.
it is. And this is just the start of an amazing story
Right.
where he becomes one of the most influential people in the early Christian church. But before we get into that, let's take a minute to think about what we've learned.
Yeah, that sounds like a good place to end part 2 of our deep dive into the conversion of Saul. Join us for the last part, where we'll explore the meaning of his transformation and the impact it had on the spread of Christianity.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been looking at this incredible story, the conversion of Saul, from someone who hunted down Christians to a devoted follower of Jesus. It's a story with a lot of twists and turns. Blinding light, a voice from heaven, and escape. Even some people didn't believe him at first.
It really shows how life can be unpredictable and how even the most stubborn hearts can be changed by faith.
Yeah, exactly. So last time we talked about how Saul was accepted into the Christian community in Jerusalem, thanks to Barnabas speaking up for him. But that's not the end of his story, right? Oh no, not at all. It's just the beginning of his impact on the early church. He actually ends up being known by a new name, Paul. And he becomes super important in spreading Christianity throughout the Roman world.
Whoa, it's incredible. This guy who used to persecute Christians becomes a key figure in spreading their message. What do you think made that happen? Was it just his passion, or was there something more to it?
I think it was a few things. Saul, now Paul, was clearly very passionate, and he understood both Jewish and Greek cultures really well. This helped him connect with all sorts of people. and explain the message of Jesus in a way they could understand.
So it's like he was able to connect those different cultures
Yeah,
and bring Christianity to more people.
exactly. He could talk to both Jews and Gentiles. He knew the scriptures and understood their traditions. He was great at communicating, adapting his message to different groups, but always staying true to the main ideas of Christianity.
It shows how powerful it can be to find your own voice and use it to make a difference. But it wasn't just about changing his name and preaching. There was a real internal change too, wasn't there?
Definitely. Paul's writings were a big part of the New Testament, and they show a deep understanding of God's grace and the transformative power of faith. He struggled with questions of sin and redemption, and how law and grace work together. His own experience of being both a persecutor and someone who received God's mercy really shaped his beliefs.
So his own journey became the basis for his teaching.
Exactly. He spoke from his own life, not just from ideas, and that resonated with people. They could feel how much he had changed and how genuine his faith was.
It reminds me that sometimes the most powerful messages come from people who have gone through tough times and come out the other side transformed. Their stories give hope to others.
I agree. And Paul's story is still inspiring today. It makes us think about our own beliefs and be open to change and to see how God might be working in unexpected ways.
So what are some key takeaways from our deep dive into Saul's conversion?
Well, it shows that anyone can change, even people who seem far from faith. It challenges us to think about how we're spreading or blocking love and compassion, and it encourages us to be open to change in ourselves and others, because God can work through anyone.
It's a powerful message of hope. No matter what you've done, there's always a chance for a new beginning.
Exactly. It encourages us to be curious and open to others.
Right.
Because we all have the potential to grow and change.
Okay, so as we wrap up, I have a question for our listeners. What if you met someone who had totally changed? Someone who used to be against you but now supports you? Would you listen? Would you try to see them differently? And even more importantly, are you open to the possibility of changing yourself?
Those are good questions to think about. The story of Saul's conversion encourages us to see how complex people are, to recognize the power of change, and to be open to unexpected ways that grace can come into our lives and change us.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the amazing story of Saul's conversion. We hope it's given you some things to think about. See you next time.